Have you ever wondered what happens when love starts to fade in a relationship? It's not always about loud arguments, slammed doors, or dramatic fights. In fact, it often starts quietly, almost imperceptibly. One moment, everything seems fine. The words, the routines, the little gestures that you've come to expect. But slowly, something shifts, and if you're not paying attention, you might miss the first signs of this change. The distance grows not with angry words, but with a subtle withdrawal, a loss of interest, and a gradual feeling of being overlooked. It doesn't always come with a clear announcement, but instead it shows up in the small moments when you realize that they're not as engaged in your life anymore. These quiet shifts in behavior can be some of the hardest to notice, yet they carry the most significant weight. And here's the thing. If you're starting to notice these signs, you might be wondering, what should I do about it? You deserve clarity, and it's time to recognize when these changes are not just temporary, but a reflection of something deeper. By the end of this video, you'll have a clearer understanding of what's happening and what steps you can take to address it. So, stick with us until the end, because one of these signs might completely change how you view your relationship. It's important to recognize the difference between being tolerated and truly being loved, and you deserve to know where you stand. Let's dive in and explore these subtle yet powerful signs together. One of the first and quietest signs that love is fading in a relationship is a loss of curiosity. When someone no longer loves you, they stop being interested in the details of your life, the little things that once mattered. Think about it. Not too long ago, they might have asked you how your doctor's appointment went or how your day at work was. They wanted to know what made you happy, what upset you, and what excited you. But now when you speak, they barely lift their eyes. There are no follow-up questions, no real interest in the stories you share. Instead, the conversations feel more like obligations, something they have to get through rather than something they're invested in. This change might seem small at first, but it's a clear sign that emotional distance is setting in. The lack of curiosity isn't about you being boring or having fewer interesting stories to tell. It's about the emotional disconnection that's starting to take root. When someone loves you, they lean into your world. They make the effort to learn about your life, your joys, your frustrations. But when love fades, they stop caring to know. Now, let me introduce you to Edna and Paul. Married for almost 40 years, Edna used to share everything with Paul. She'd tell him about the roses blooming in the garden, the amusing things the neighbor's dog did, or how her book club was debating over the latest mystery novel. Paul would listen, laugh, and engage. But over time, something changed. Edna would start a story, and Paul wouldn't even look up from the television. He'd grunt in response or just nod absent-mindedly. Edna began to feel that heavy silence in their conversations. It wasn't that Paul was angry or upset with her, but it was the absence of interest, the absence of connection. It was like she was talking to a wall, not her partner. And she felt it long before she could name it. This emotional withdrawal doesn't often come with big dramatic moments. It's quieter than that. It's the absence of curiosity that speaks the loudest. There's research to back up this observation too. Studies show that emotional disengagement, like a loss of curiosity, is often one of the first signs of relationship distress. In a study published by the Journal of Marriage and Family, researchers found that couples who experience emotional distance often report a decline in communication and a decrease in interest in each other's lives. In fact, a study from the University of California found that couples who stop asking about each other's daily lives are more likely to experience dissatisfaction and eventual separation. When you stop showing interest, it's often a sign that emotional investment is waning. And while you may still be sharing physical space without emotional connection, it can feel incredibly lonely, even when you're together. This disconnection doesn't happen overnight, but over time, it erodes the bond that once held you together. If you're starting to feel like your stories don't land anymore, or your updates go unnoticed, it might be time to ask yourself, when did they stop being curious about me? And why didn't I notice it sooner? Because when love fades, this is often the first sign. When the questions stop coming, when the interest starts slipping away, and when the silence grows louder than the words ever could. It's a hard truth, but it's one that deserves to be recognized, especially when you're trying to figure out where you stand. If you've noticed this shift in your relationship, don't ignore it. It's not about being boring or having less to share. It's about emotional investment. And once you recognize that, you can begin to understand where things might be headed. So ask yourself, do I still feel like the main character in their life? Or have I become background noise? It's time to be honest with yourself. As the emotional distance widens, the second sign that love is fading often becomes painfully clear: decreased patience. When someone no longer loves you, their ability to tolerate even the smallest quirks or habits begins to wear thin. What once seemed like harmless annoyances or minor mistakes now becomes a source of irritation. You might find yourself walking on eggshells, unsure of how to approach them without triggering a sigh, a sharp remark, or even a cold, dismissive look. Take a story of Helen, who's 76 years old, and for most of her marriage to Richard, he was the epitome of patience. He would tease her gently when she misplaced her glasses or had trouble remembering something. It wasn't just that he tolerated it. He made her feel supported and loved, even in those little moments of forgetfulness. But over time, things changed. Richard started to snap at her. When she asked for help finding her glasses, instead of the usual gentle reminder, he rolled his eyes and muttered, "Can't you just remember for once?" Helen could feel the difference in his tone. Something was off. It wasn't just a bad day. It was a growing pattern of irritation. Helen didn't need to be told that something had shifted. She felt it in every interaction, in the way he now right at her simplest requests. She started to wonder, what happened to the man who used to care so deeply about her? The person who would patiently help her with even the smallest tasks was now the person who made her feel like a burden. This change didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual shift that Helen couldn't ignore anymore, and the hurt she felt began to pile up. What used to feel like grace and understanding now felt like rejection, and it left her feeling isolated in her own home. Science backs up the emotional impact of this change. Studies on relationship dynamics, such as those from the National Institutes of Health, have found that a decrease in patience, especially in older couples, often correlates with the emotional withdrawal that leads to long-term dissatisfaction. In fact, the Journal of Marriage and Family published a study showing that couples who stop offering grace to each other, especially in moments of vulnerability or when one partner has physical or mental health issues, experience a significant decline in relationship satisfaction. What's even more alarming is that, according to the American Psychological Association, when patience begins to erode, it often signals a deeper emotional disconnect that can lead to a breakdown in communication and trust. When your partner stops showing patience, it isn't necessarily about what you did or didn't do. It's a reflection of their diminishing emotional investment in the relationship. Helen's experience is not unique. Many couples, particularly in long-term marriages or relationships, begin to experience this shift as they grow older. Life's stresses, health concerns, and even the daily grind can sometimes wear down even the strongest relationships. But it's important to recognize when these signs become more than just a rough patch. It's easy to rationalize a bad day or a stressful period as the cause of a partner's irritability. But when that irritation becomes the norm, it's a wake-up call. In Helen's case, the shift in Richard's behavior wasn't about her, it was about him emotionally checking out. And once that happens, the love they once shared begins to feel distant, almost unreachable. The loss of patience can be a slow burn, but it leaves deep emotional scars that are hard to heal. If you find yourself feeling like a burden instead of a partner, it's time to take a step back and assess the relationship honestly. Remember, no one should have to walk on eggshells in a relationship. You deserve someone who shows grace, patience, and kindness, not just on the good days, but on the challenging ones too. As patience begins to erode, the third sign that love is fading can often becomes even more evident: a lack of time together. When love starts to slip away, the time you once shared, the simple, meaningful moments that made your relationship feel connected, begins to shrink. It's not always about being too busy or having a packed schedule. It's about the absence of a genuine desire to spend time with each other. Think of someone like Ray, a 68-year-old man who had spent most of his life enjoying quiet mornings with his wife Linda. Every morning, they would sip coffee together at the kitchen table, sharing stories about their days or just sitting in peaceful silence. It wasn't about the conversation itself. It was about being present with one another. But over the past few months, Ray began to notice Linda leaving earlier in the morning, going for long walks by herself. The coffee would be made, but the seat across from him would be empty. At first, he told himself she just needed some me time, but it kept happening. Soon, Linda began staying away from the house more frequently, spending less time with him, and when she was home, her mind seemed to be elsewhere. Ray felt more like a stranger in his own home. He had become accustomed to her presence, but now, even when she was physically there, it felt like she was a million miles away. The emotional gap between them had grown, and it was no longer about busy schedules or daily distractions. It was about the withdrawal that neither of them had fully acknowledged. Studies show that when one partner in a relationship starts to withdraw emotionally, their physical presence also diminishes. According to a study published by the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, couples who experience emotional distance often report a decline in spending quality time together, which further accelerates the emotional detachment. In fact, the National Institute of Aging found that in long-term marriages, a reduction in shared time and activities directly correlates with decreased relationship satisfaction and increased feelings of loneliness. Ray's experience with Linda is not an isolated one. Many people, especially in longer marriages, find that their time together begins to shrink as emotional intimacy fades. The simple acts of sharing a meal, going for a walk, or even watching a movie together are replaced with other distractions, or worse, silence. When you stop spending meaningful time together, it can feel as if the bond you once shared is slipping through your fingers. It's not just about being physically present in the same room, it's about being emotionally present in each other's lives. If you're starting to notice that your time together is less frequent, or that your partner no longer seems interested in sharing even the simplest moments, it's time to pay attention. This isn't just a sign of busyness or external stress. It's a sign that the emotional connection between you is fading. If you've been feeling isolated or disconnected from your partner despite being in the same space, it's worth asking, when did they stop wanting to spend time with me? And why didn't I notice it sooner? Recognizing this shift early is essential because it allows you to address it before the gap between you becomes insurmountable. You deserve someone who values your presence, someone who chooses to spend time with you, not just because it's convenient, but because they still care. If you're relating to Ray's experience, don't ignore the emotional void that's been created by a lack of time together. Relationships require effort, and both partners must actively choose to invest in each other. So take a moment to reflect. How much time are you truly spending with your partner? Are you making time for each other, or has the emotional distance caused you to drift apart? If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic, especially if you've experienced similar struggles in your own relationships. Your support helps us continue to create meaningful content so we can keep providing insights and advice that truly make a difference in your life. Thank you for being here, and we look forward to your comments and feedback. As the emotional distance grows and time together becomes increasingly rare, the fourth sign that love is fading is often the most heartbreaking: emotional withholding. When someone no longer loves you, they stop letting you in, not just into their daily life, but into their inner world. You used to be the person they confided in, the one they shared their worries and dreams with. But now, Jim, it feels like they're wearing a mask, answering your questions with short, surface-level responses, offering no depth, no vulnerability. What used to be a safe space for them to open up about their fears, hopes, and even the mundane aspects of their day now feels closed off. Let's consider Gloria and Samuel. Gloria, at 71, had been Samuel's confidant for years. He would tell her everything, his struggles at work, his worries about aging, and even his deepest fears about their children's future. Gloria had always been the one he turned to, but over the last year, something had changed. Samuel became distant, refusing to share anything meaningful. When his cousin passed away, Gloria didn't hear about it until a week later. She asked why he hadn't told her sooner, and his response was simply, "I didn't want to burden you." But Gloria knew that wasn't the real reason. Samuel, who once considered her his best friend and closest confidant, had started pulling away emotionally. He no longer trusted her with his thoughts or his pain. He had begun to carry his burdens alone, and the space between them widened with every secret he kept. Gloria felt the sting of this emotional distance deeply. It wasn't about what Samuel was or wasn't sharing, but the fact that he no longer felt safe enough to confide in her. This type of withdrawals doesn't always happen with anger or big dramatic moments. It's more subtle, like an invisible wall being built between two people who once shared everything. It's a quiet retreat that leaves the other partner feeling neglected, unimportant, and increasingly isolated. The emotional withholding is particularly painful because it's not just silence. It's a refusal to share the very things that made you feel connected in the first place. It's about no longer feeling like a priority in their life. Research shows that emotional withdrawal is one of the strongest predictors of relationship breakdowns. According to a study by the American Psychological Association, couples who experience emotional disengagement, particularly in the form of withholding, are more likely to experience a decline in relationship satisfaction and, eventually, separation. This is because emotional intimacy is the foundation of any strong relationship, and when that intimacy is eroded, it becomes difficult to maintain a meaningful connection. Furthermore, a study from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that couples who stop being emotionally available to each other often report increased feelings of loneliness and resentment. The withholding is not always conscious. It can happen as a result of feeling disconnected or emotionally overwhelmed, but the impact is the same. The partner who is being shut out begins to feel like they are living with a stranger. Gloria's experience is a powerful reminder that emotional intimacy isn't just about being physically present or going through the motions of everyday life together. It's about trust, vulnerability, and the willingness to share your inner world. When those things start to disappear, so does the closeness that once existed. If you've noticed your partner becoming emotionally distant, or if you find yourself being shut out from their thoughts and feelings, it's time to take a step back and reflect. Emotional withholding is one of the clearest signs that love is fading, and it's often a signal that the relationship is no longer fulfilling the emotional needs of both partners. The sooner you recognize this pattern, the sooner you can begin to address it, either by having an open conversation with your partner or by seeking outside support. The most important thing is to acknowledge the pain of emotional distance and not dismiss it as temporary. You deserve to feel seen, heard, and valued in your relationship. And if that's no longer happening, it's essential to consider what steps you need to take for your own emotional well-being. As the emotional connection continues to weaken, the fifth and final sign that love is fading is often one of the most telling: physical withdrawal. When emotional closeness begins to fade, the physical closeness usually follows suit. You notice fewer hugs, less eye contact, no more spontaneous touches or affectionate gestures. What used to be natural, holding hands, leaning into each other, or even a simple kiss on the forehead, becomes a distant memory. The physical absence is subtle but significant. To better understand this, Let's look at Martin and Alice, who had been married for 45 years. For most of their lives, their affection was effortless. They would hold hands during their walks, rub each other's shoulders after a long day, and exchange quick kisses before bed. But after Martin retired, things began to change. He became quieter, more distant. He would turn his back on Alice when they went to bed, and when she tried to rest her hand on his knee while watching television, he would shrug it off. Eventually, Martin stopped initiating any form of physical affection altogether, and Alice, feeling rejected, stopped reaching out too. It wasn't because they had stopped loving each other. It was because they had both emotionally withdrawn, and the physical distance followed. Alice began to feel as though she was living with a roommate rather than her husband. The warmth that once filled their shared spaces was gone. It wasn't about passion or romance anymore. It was about presence and reassurance. Physical touch is a form of communication that speaks volumes in relationships. It's not just about expressing love, it's about maintaining a bond and reaffirming that bond through simple acts of physical connection. When those touches start to fade, it's easy to question what's happening. You may wonder if it's something you've done wrong, if they've lost interest in you, or if your relationship is beyond repair. Unfortunately, when physical withdrawal occurs, it's often a reflection of a deeper emotional withdrawal. Research supports the idea that physical affection plays a crucial role in maintaining a healthy relationship. According to a study published by Psychological Science, couples who engage in frequent physical touch are more likely to experience higher levels of relationship satisfaction and emotional intimacy. On the other hand, a lack of physical affection can lead to feelings of loneliness and emotional disconnect. A study from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships further highlights that physical affection serves as a key emotional anchor, particularly in long-term relationships. It provides a sense of security and belonging that words alone cannot. When physical touch starts to disappear, it can be a powerful indicator that the relationship is no longer fulfilling the emotional needs of both partners. For Martin and Alice, the lack of physical affection wasn't about any one event. It wasn't about losing attraction or love for each other. It was about a gradual emotional withdrawal that had left them both feeling isolated even when they were in the same room. If you've noticed that the physical connection in your relationship has diminished, it might be time to take a step back and reflect on the emotional dynamics at play. Physical touch is often the last thread that holds a relationship together. When that thread begins to unravel, it's a sign that emotional intimacy has already started to fade. It's essential to acknowledge that these changes, though painful, are often signs of deeper issues that need to be addressed. You deserve to feel emotionally and physically connected to your partner. And if that connection has faded, it's important to explore why that's happening and whether it can be repaired. Recognizing the signs of physical withdrawal is a crucial step in understanding the state of your relationship. It's not always about fixing things right away. It's about understanding what has changed and what needs to be done to restore the connection that once existed. As you reflect on these 5 signs, it's important to remember that love doesn't always fade with dramatic gestures or harsh words. Often, it's the quiet, subtle changes that tell the real story. The emotional distance that creeps in, the lack of curiosity, patience, time, and the emotional and physical withdrawal. These signs might not be easy to recognize at first, especially when you're still going through the motions, but acknowledging them is the first step toward understanding the health of your relationship. If you're experiencing any of these shifts, it's important to ask yourself, when did the connection start to fade? The longer you ignore these signs, the harder it can be to reconnect. It's not about jumping to conclusions or making rash decisions. It's about understanding the changes that are happening and deciding whether you want to address them with honesty and care. Love can be rekindled, but it requires open communication, a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths, and a commitment to rebuilding the emotional and physical closeness that may have been lost. You deserve a relationship where you feel valued, heard, and connected, emotionally and physically. If you found this video helpful, take a moment to like and share it with someone who might need to hear this today. We all go through moments of doubt in our relationships, and sometimes just knowing you're not alone can make a difference. Please leave a comment below and share your thoughts or experiences. Your feedback helps us continue to create content that resonates with you. Thank you for being here, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.